Well, as we bring year to a close and we start a new year, I think one of the things it causes all of us to do is just to do a lot of reflection and just thinking ahead. And, as I like to think of it, as I'm thinking about all of this, I'm reflecting backwards, but thinking ahead forward, if that makes any sense. As we start a new year, I think it causes us to really kind of reflect on the previous year. 2024 for a lot of us was a tough year. I know for me personally, it was uh, a year of a whole lot of change for me. As I've shared with many of you, my wife passed away at the end of 2023. 2024 was a whole year of me trying to find a new normal, just find a new way of being, a new way of just interacting in the world and just redefining myself. And so it's caused me to reflect a lot and thinking back over this past year and all the changes that I've gone through personally. But I think even on the bigger picture, just a lot of change for us on the political landscape. I know there are a lot of us that were affected by the flooding from Hurricane Helene. So a lot of tough stuff to have to deal with. And, I think it affects us in our business. I know it has affected me in my business in that I've really had to put a lot of effort into getting things done, getting tasks done, really thinking about, okay, what am I going to do next? What's next on the horizon? What do I want out of all of this? And I think that is one of the places in which I know this past week, as a matter of fact, yesterday, as I'm recording this, I did some journaling and just really thinking about, okay, what are my priorities? What are the things that are most important to me in my life? And what is it that I want to focus on in this new year? One of the things that I always struggle with is staying organized and also having a really bad tendency to procrastinate. And so that's something that I want to continue to work on, and I think for a lot of us too, just thinking about our health, and the media is just full of weight loss commercials and that sort of thing. And I think that's something that I'm always focused on as well, just thinking about how can I have a healthier lifestyle, those kinds of things. But all of that, when you think about it, there are so many different touch points or different areas of things that we want to focus on. I like to think of it as the different domains of my life. And so, one of the things that I do is, in just thinking, and this kind of coincides with my journaling, is just to sit down and take a sheet of paper or a whiteboard and just divide things out into the different domains of your life. So, for example, for me, I've got my home life, I've got my house, I've got my, things that I do within my circle of friends that are outside my business, those kinds of things. I've got my faith community, my church work that I'm involved in. That's another domain that kind of coincides with my friends and personal life. And then also, I've got my business. I've got my practice, Kingsport Counseling Associates, and I've got those people that my employees, and, managing the day to day running of that business and that practice. And then I've got, of course, the practice of therapy, this podcast, along with the Sightcraft Network that I started in 2023 or 2022, rather. It's been a while now. Anyway, I've got those different domains of my life. And so it's helpful for me to just kind of block those off on my whiteboard or my piece of paper and just think about, okay, if I focused on just one of those domains, what are the things I want to accomplish, or what are the things that I want to change or make better or get done in the new year? And so I think breaking things down into smaller pieces is really helpful in thinking about goal setting. But even before that, I think one of the things that I think is really important to reflect on is, what is the purpose behind everything? What is the why behind everything? I think a lot of times we will set goals that we maybe think, well, this is a good idea, or this is something I should do, or ought to do, those kinds of things. But it might be things that really you don't want to put any energy into. And so those are the things that I think you have to think about. Certainly there are a lot of things within our life or things that we do have to do. For example, progress notes and those kinds of things. So looking at ways to automate those things. One of the sponsors of this particular episode is Barry's ICU, and it's an AI driven product that is there to help you complete your progress notes much quicker and faster. And so I think looking for ways in which to do task like that or any other task, to look for ways to automate as much as you can and also outsource things that you just don't enjoy doing. And so that's something that I have to remind myself to do. One of the difficulties that I've always had, and this has been the case since I started my practice, is that being a person that is kind of a helper on the Enneagram. If you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'm a Enneagram 2 with a wing 3, which is the 2 is the helper, and then the wing 3 is the achiever. And so I'm very driven by helping people in that sense. And so I don't like to impose on people. And so what that ends up being is that I end up trying to do too much of it myself rather than handing it off to people. And I could probably do a whole episode on just delegating and being able to outsource better. But anyway, I think in thinking about your new year and the things that you want to accomplish, I think it's helpful to think about it in that way. What are the things that you want to not take on, but take off your plate as a way to enjoy your life more? One of the things that I've done this past year, which I hope to do more of, is I traveled some, which is something I've had to put off for several years. Took a trip to Spain, and it was a great trip. Went with a group of friends that I gotten to be very close with. We all knew each other, but became much closer on the trip. And so those kinds of things also bring meaning. And I think, tied to your why should be some meaning. I'm always reminded of Viktor Frankl's book, The Man's Search for Meaning. And I'm going to paraphrase kind of something that he said. Viktor Frankl said, if we don't find meaning and purpose in our life, we will tend to seek out pleasure instead. And as we all know, pleasure, I think we need to do pleasurable things and fun things. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but if it's all driven by just doing what is pleasurable, what is easy, what takes stress off of us, if it's just about that, then it's going to be pretty empty. So I think we need to find things in our life that bring meaning and purpose and give us a sense of, yeah, that we're doing something that to a greater good in some form or fashion. So I think that's something to think about in your new year. One of the things I would, going back to, separating things out into the different domains, I think it is a helpful process to maybe do some journaling. Like I mentioned, I did that yesterday in just thinking about this episode, but just thinking about the new year. I went and sat down with my journal and just started thinking about what this past year was like. What were the things that were kind of the touch points or the bullet points or the things that kind of stood out for me about this past year, both accomplishments and also just things that were meaningful to me. So I think it's good to kind of reflect on those things, but also thinking ahead, what is it that is going to be meaningful for me in the future, in this next year, in this next 12 months? I think for you to be able to do that as well is very important. Most of us that are, at least I know most of the people listening to this podcast are in the mental health field. And so we apply a lot of this knowledge and these ideas with our clients, but I think sometimes we're not good about applying it to our own lives. So take what you know, take what you believe in, take what you find important, the the knowledge that you share with your clients, the things that you help your clients with, and apply it to yourself. And so Yeah, I think that's a good starting place is just to do some reflection, do some journaling, and just thinking about kind of the big picture of your life and your business and your family and all those things that are most important to you, and kind of narrow it down to what are your key motivations. In the full focus planner that I mentioned at the beginning, there's a section at the very beginning of the planner that is specifically for your goal details. And each goal that you set for yourself in the planner has a full page devoted to that. And I'm just going to read off to you what kind of the different sections of each page on the goal detail pages are. First is your goal statement. In other words, it says write a smarter goal. And I'm going to talk about SMART goals here in a minute. The second one is key motivations. And when I'm using this, that's where I start is with the key motivations. What are the main reasons for even setting this goal? What are the priorities and the why behind the goal that you're setting for yourself? Also, there's a section in here for writing out the next steps in accomplishing the goal. And then I think this is important too, is there's a section in there. How are you going to celebrate the accomplishment of the goal? In other words, how are you going to reward yourself for accomplishing that goal? Because I think it's important to celebrate and remember all of those things. And then also, there's a way for you to track the progress of your goal as you go throughout the year. Go throughout the quarter of just saying, okay, where am I in this process of setting a goal? One of the things that in the full focus planner that I like is that it encourages you to write what is called a smarter goal. The premise behind that is with Micah, there's an acronym just called SMART goals, which is as the word is SMART. And the S stands for something specific you want to accomplish. In other words, something that you can write out and not just something that is really vague. The second one is M, and that's just what is measurable. Then there's the A. Is it attainable? Is it realistic? And is the goal relevant? The R is how is the goal important to you? And then the T is time specific. In other words, when are you going to accomplish the goal? So in writing a goal, you don't want it to be something that is really vague. You want it to be very specific. You want it measurable. You want it attainable. It needs to be relevant and time specific. And then with Michael Hyatt, he adds on to that smarter, the E and the R. And the E stands for evaluate. So you go back and look and see your progress along the way. And then, as I mentioned on the page in his goal detail, what is the reward at the end that you're going to give yourself for accomplishing that goal? One of the things that I put together and actually did this a few years ago is a SMART goal worksheet that you can get. It's a free download that I created. And if you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com/smart goal, you can download that for free. You just sign the little form and it'll come to your inbox. So it's practiceoftherapy.com/smart goals. Leave the worksheet off of that. But anyway, we'll have a link here in the show notes and show summary for that. But yeah, so looking forward to the new year for me personally. Got planning on doing some more traveling. I'm planning on doing some revamping of practice of therapy. There are a lot of things that need updating. For example, the private practice startup guide. I've got to revamp that, and that's going to be something I'm going to do in this first quarter. Also, really helping people with podcasting through the Sightcraft Network. That's going to be a goal of mine is to bring on more podcasters, but also helping people start podcasts. I know this has been just a very rewarding process for me, and I just enjoy putting this out every week and just get the thing I love most about it are the people that I get to interview and the relationships that I forge through the podcast. So that's another kind of broad goal. Also, just looking at my house and downsizing and just the looking at my where I live and how I can make that better and more suitable for the life that I'm living now. And then also the other thing is, as I mentioned, at the beginning, you've heard me talk about on several other episodes, just kind of promoting, is helping my friend Ashley with her online store and getting that going. And then also just with my practice, helping to improve our processes there, bringing on some more clinicians and really making things run even smoother. I feel like we've got good systems and processes within my practice, and also doing some more consulting with people. One of the things that I'm looking at, getting people more involved in the practice of therapy, practice collaborative, which is a mastermind group that I started. You can find out more about that by going to the website. But anyway, you'll be hearing more about that as I kind of revamp that in this next year. But anyway, hope you have a great new year. Looking forward to 2025. I'm very optimistic and excited about all the new things that are coming down the pike for me personally, but also just thinking about all the positive changes we can all make in the world moving forward. So take care, folks, and thanks again for joining me on the podcast.